Hi, my name's James Only. I'm doing this video from Cornwall, United Kingdom. It's Tuesday. I've not done a video for a few days because I've had headaches and all sorts. But I think it's just my body telling me to take a rest. So go with it. Back at work tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be okay for work. Always seems to be okay for work. It's as though my body says, let's make sure Jimmy gets to work. Let's keep him financially sound. But he's got to take the odd day off. So I'm going to call this video Alex Brummer. Is it Alex Brummer? Yeah, Alex Brummer, Daily Mail. He's the head financial honcho at the Daily Mail. So I'm going to call this Alex Brummer watches my videos. He must do. But he's way behind. I'm way in front of him. So I've been talking about this months ago. I talked about Asda. Now it's all a joke. Don't believe all that. Two British, Asian, Indian guys buy Asda. It's a sign of success. It's a sign of integration. It's good for this country. Blah, blah, blah. No, they were backed by somebody. Somebody backed them. Somebody lent them more money. And they're going to make sure that they get as much as they can out of that. And then one day Asda might go bankrupt. But it doesn't matter because their money will be separate from the bankruptcy. And you've got all these hedge funds that are now raping this country. You know, we can see that we're heading into a financial crisis. A financial crash. We can see it. But how come they have all this money to buy things, to pay billions? Well, let's go back to 2008. Royal Bank of Scotland, Halifax, all of them. Northern Rock. They trashed the economy of this country because they'd overstretched themselves. Royal Bank of Scotland with, forgot the head of, I get them mixed up, Royal Bank of Scotland and Bank of Scotland, but whoever, one of them built a new headquarters and he paid himself a great big bonus, the head of the bank. We're going to be a major player in the world. We're going to put Scotland on the map. We're going to put Edinburgh on the map. Yeah, it was on the fucking map, all right. The biggest financial fucking crash in this country, the history of this country. Had to be bailed out. So, Gordon Brown, quantitative easy. And he actually made that statement, I've saved the world. I've saved the world's financial system. He actually said that. And I've read the autobiography of Alistair Darling. And if you can, get it. It's a very, very interesting book, the autobiography of Alistair Darling. And he talks about this period because he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And he vetoed Barclays buying Lehman's debt. Lehman's were going to buy Lehman's debt. And he vetoed it. Luckily. That was one of the options. Lehman's, can we find a buyer? And Barclays were like that. Yeah, we'll buy you. Oh, we're getting a good price. And Alistair Darling vetoed it. And then he went bust a couple of days later. Or a day later. It was on the Monday. But over the weekend, Barclays were going to buy Lehman's. And then Alistair Darling vetoed it. What a period that was. But anyway, Alistair Darling saved us. In a way. Very strange. Communists saved us. But you had the banks, Royal Bank of Scotland, the Bank of Scotland, and they both got bailed out big. They both got bailed out big time. Just like the other banks, by Gordon Brown. Anyway, things settled down. Oh, we're all right now. They paid themselves the bonuses again. There was a bit of a stink. But they said, oh, no, we're paying ourselves bonuses. We've got to. Because if we don't pay ourselves bonuses, we'll leave and we'll go to another bank where they do pay bonuses. Nobody challenged them on it. The MPs didn't have the nerve to say, you're not getting. Well, it should have been a condition of the bailout, really, that you're not getting a loan for, you're not getting a. You should have made it a condition of the bailouts that nobody got a bonus for 3 years. And if you want to leave, leave. That's what they should have done, but they didn't. So anyway, all settled down. Next thing you know is all this quantitative easing was flooding the markets, the banks in America and here. So let's say America, in the banks, the Federal Reserve, Bank of America, they gave them a credit note for quantitative easing for $200 billion. So this piece of paper goes in the Bank of America for $200 million. Or should we say 2 billion? Let's say 2 billion. $2 billion piece of paper guaranteed by the government. Now, because they've done that, the Bank of America is allowed to create 9 times 2. They're always allowed to create 9 imaginary whatever they've got. So if they've got a credit note off the American government for $2 billion, they're allowed to create $18 billion. And it's purely imaginary. It doesn't exist. It's not savers' money. It's called fractional lending. And the rule used to be 1 to 4. You only used to be able to create 4 imaginary. But our great Prime Minister, John Major, and the great American President, Bill Clinton, they changed the rules from 1 to 4 to 1 to 9. So they increased the amount of imaginary money from 1 to 4 to 1 to 9. So Bank of America, 2008 bailout, it creates, from that 2 billion, it creates 18 billion. Well, it's got to lend this imaginary money out. It's got to find ways to lend it out so it can make money. Because if it lends money, it can charge somebody for borrowing that money, even though it's not fucking real. It ain't real. I've just explained that. It's not real. That 18 billion was created from the 2 billion credit note that the Federal Reserve put in as quantitative easing to get the financial system going again. But the financial system, when we say it's going again, it's only going for the banks. It's working for the banks and whoever borrows that money to go buy things. So all this money flooded the American banking system and Wall Street and the hedge funds. So what happened was Kraft, K-R-A-F-T, the company, they went and borrowed money at low interest. Because the fucking market is flooded with money. And it borrowed all this money to buy Cadbury's in this country. So there was a big stink, just like Morrison's. There's going to be a stink soon in the next week. The MPs are starting to make noises, but there's nothing they can do. So the MPs start going on, well, you can't buy Cadbury's, it's a British institution. And then you start getting programmes on TV about all the charitable stuff that Cadbury's did when it was set up, the Quakers and all that. And then this financial system and the hedge funds are all going to come in and buy it. And so Kraft promised Parliament that if they buy it, there'll be no jobs lost. There'll be no jobs exported abroad. Everything was going to stay the same. They were just buying it as an investment. So I think it came to, if you check it up, it was like in the billions. For Kraft to buy Cadbury's was in the billions. Now, it's either Royal Bank of Scotland or Bank of Scotland. I don't know which one. Fucking Mark and Mindy. One of the two. They lent. This deal was so big that Kraft had to go and borrow money from different banks. They had to put the loan together from different banks, just like the Channel Tunnel. 1,000 banks got together to lend them to create the money for the Channel Tunnel. Do you know we're still paying the interest off the Channel Tunnel? The investors, all the people who bought shares in the Channel Tunnel, nothing. They've never had a dividend back. But since the Channel Tunnel opened, started doing business, they've been paying £300 million interest a year. Where am I? Channel Tunnel, the interest, it's in my book. £300 million a year interest. But the shareholders never got a penny. That's a story. So anyway, so Kraft, they went and borrowed money from different banks. And it was either Mark and Mindy, Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland, who lent Kraft, the American company, to buy Cadbury's, the English company. They lent them £800 million. £800 fucking million. Well, that was a quantity of easing money that saved them. So Gordon Brown gave Royal Bank, Mark and Mindy, gave them each a credit note for like 500 million. They then created 9 times 500 million, which is 4.5 billion, whatever. They're now like looking for people to lend that money to so they can start making money. Because they need bonuses at the end of the year. So they lent Kraft 800 million. So Kraft buy Cadbury's. And what did they do? Within a year, they fucking shut down the factories and they've moved them to Poland. And all they kept was the research centre in Birmingham, wherever it is, Aston. So the Cadbury's chocolate factories went to Poland. But then, so that they didn't have to pay tax, the chocolate company, or should I say part of it, they called it Mondale. They changed the name to Mondale and they sectioned it up, you know, like you get a pie chart. And they said, right, that section of Kraft is now going to be called Mondale. And they moved it to Switzerland, so there's only 10% tax to the Swiss, not to the Americans. So the Americans have lost tax money, we've lost tax money, but we've lost jobs as well. And Mark and Mindy, the Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland, they fucking helped do that by lending Kraft 800 million. Now here's the interesting thing. The head of Kraft was a woman. And her reward for the deal, because loads of people got rewards, bonuses, the head of Kraft got $40 million bonus just for that one deal. So that's what's happening with Morrison's. And a couple of weeks ago, I said that the Federal Reserve is flooding the American banking system and Wall Street and the hedge funds with money. It's flooding them. It's just printing money because of this COVID crisis. He's saying it's stimulus, but who's it stimulating? It's bribing the people at the bottom by giving them a couple of checks. They had a couple of checks. They had a check just before Christmas, and I think they had a small check just after Christmas. There's a check for you. You keep quiet. In this country, we've been getting people who work from home or whatever, or who've been like sent home. They've been getting paid. Companies have been getting loads. So it's very similar to the American stimulus check. And it's the same in Germany, same in France. So I said that this new quantitative easing is now creating the next set of buyouts, just like in 2008. It wasn't just Kraft that went and bought Cadbury's. There was loads of it going on. And people are scratching their heads going, how can they be fucking spending billions and billions and billions of dollars when we've just had the banks go bust and they're buying all this stuff up, you know? So that's what happened. And I explained it last week that the Federal Reserve is flooding the system with money, and then they're using that money to come here and buy companies so they've got something, they own something, they've got an asset. Because when the dollar collapses, what's the point in having a bank full of useless dollars that can't go to China and buy something, or Japan and buy something, or France or Germany, because the dollar's lost its value? So what they're doing now is they're reaching out and they're buying things abroad and at home as well, so that they own something when the dollar collapses. And then those companies return money to America when the financial crash comes. But that money should be here, shouldn't it? If it's an English company, English workers, in the financial crashes, when the country's on its ass, any money that is made should be here. But it's not going to be, is it? And we can see that with Morrison's, but they're already talking about coming after Sainsbury's and Tesco's and whatever. Because the hedge fund has already got Asda. Private investors have already got Asda. It's now almost certain that they're going to get Morrison's, because now other companies are coming and it's even forcing the price up even more. Now you've got that there, supermarket prices set to rocket, and it's starting to get in the news. But you've got this as well. MPs enter Morrison's row. So the MPs are like getting agitated now. Oh, the jobs and profits and money and tax and hedge fund. Well, they're all going to be given sweeteners and they're all going to shut the fuck up. But here's the thing you don't know, or you might not know, or I suspect you don't know. The head of Morrison's cannot refuse to sell Asda. If people say to him, listen, you should back Britain and not sell. You know, think of British jobs, think of British profits, think of the tax going to the British economy. Don't you sell it. Withstand that pressure to sell. He's not allowed to not sell. It's against the law. Because I think it was in John Major's time again. Obviously, somebody's come and whispered in the ear, John Major or Gordon Brown or whatever, and they've whispered and they've suggested a law. And that law is that if the managing director, the head, the CEO, whatever they call him, the head of the company, if he refuses to sell, if he refuses to sanction it, or you get a cabal of directors who refuse to sell, they can be sued by shareholders for profit that they would have earned. And they are personally liable for it, not the company. So you can see on that graph there, the shares of Morrison's are going sky high. They're fucking shooting up. So each of these companies is going to make a bid. So if a company bids £5 a share and they refuse, and another company bids £6 a share and they still refuse to sell, when it's all over and them shares settle down and they go to £3.50, which is this price it should be, or about that price, the shareholders can then sue because they say they've lost £2.50 in value. So if they've got a million shares, it's a million times £2.50, and it's the CEO that is personally liable for that loss of the shareholder. So CEOs dare not sell the company because they know that a shareholder is going to come and sue them for the value of the shares if they'd have been sold. Because they just say, we lost money because you wouldn't sell. We own shares at we bought them at $2.50. All right, the price went up to $3.50, so we're quid in. But you could have sold them shares on our behalf at £6. Our government created that law that CEOs are personally liable if they don't sell the share, don't sell the company. So Morrison's has to go. It has to. Because the CEO dare not sell. So why have I called this video? Alex Brummer watches my videos. Well, yesterday in the paper, he's only talking about how the system is flooded with money. And this money is being used to buy up everything. I'll read you what he says. So he must have listened to my video from 10 days ago? Because I was saying this 10 days ago. Fucking Jimmy sat here in his little chair in Penzance was saying that the Federal Reserve has flooded the American banking system with money. So they're now going out and raping the economy of this country. Because it is rape. It's financial rape. Because like Kraft, they're going to fuck everything up. And then they're going to make sure that they don't pay tax. All them jobs that disappeared to Poland, and any company profit disappeared because they changed the name to Mondale, and moved to Switzerland. And the office in Switzerland is just a paper office. There's just a couple of very, very rich directors there and a couple of office staff, and that's it. There's no factories. There's no huge workforce in Switzerland. It's just like the Isle of Jersey. It's just a fucking nameplate on an office. And they might have a couple of offices on the 10th floor. That's it. But that means that they don't pay tax in this country, company tax, because the nameplate is on this fucking office block in Switzerland, in Geneva, and they've got like a couple of offices on the 12th floor. And all the decisions are electronic over computer. Zzz. Optic fibre, whatever, fibre optics. Decisions are shooting out across from just a few people there. And they've also got managers in Poland. They've got the few managers here in charge of what's left here. But they've got the managers of the factories making the chocolate, and it all runs itself. It's a business that runs itself. It's all automated. The systems for ordering stuff. You've got a warehouse with so much stuff, and as so much stuff goes into the process of making chocolate, automatically there will be a manager, sub-managers there that automatically order it electronically, stuff from Brazil. All the lines are in place, everything, supply lines. So the bosses in Switzerland, they're just making basically decisions on what to do with the profit and how to pay less tax. That's all they're about. Consulting the lawyers. Is there any way we can pay less tax? But anyway, Alex Brummer, I'll read you what he says yesterday, 10 days after I fucking said it. The world's major central banks have been running the printing presses at full pelt since the start of the pandemic. Even as recovery takes hold, the Western democracies show a marked reluctance to apply the brakes and be blamed for choking off recovery. So in other words, like, they're all printing money. Like I said, it's not just America, here as well. They're all printing fucking money. And it's not real money. And when they say it's for a recovery, well, a recovery of what? No, it's not. It's to make the rich richer. And they're just not doing it. They're not stopping it because the rich are demanding more money. And the rich are making sure that the politicians know they want more money. Too much money chasing too few assets is distorting the world of investment. You see, all these banks, Wall Street's flooded, Dusseldorf is flooded, or Frankfurt, innit? Frankfurt's flooded, Paris is flooded. The City of London, they're all flooded with money that's being printed, or credit notes, quantitative easing, and they're all buying stuff. Even the Aussies, the same. But then you've got the Chinese in on it as well, with their natural money and then their extra money that they're creating. China has made money in this pandemic. So too much money chasing too few assets is distorting the world of investment, because when the world's economies collapse, they need to hold an asset. It's like musical chairs. A chair is going to be taken away, and the country that doesn't get a chair, doesn't get an asset, is going to be left with nothing. And there's only a few countries that are doing this. Your smaller countries aren't doing this because their economies aren't big enough to create quantitative easing. But when the music stops and the economies crash, they have to be holding assets to take them into the next phase. World global financial meltdown. But at least they own assets that produce things that make money in a world with very little money. And it's better than just having your money sitting in the bank that has no value whatsoever. And you can't go out and buy stuff because it's all been bought. This happened in Argentina in 2000. It's in my book. The Argentine economy collapsed. For the poor people, it was a disaster, right? It meant they were a bit poorer. But for the middle classes, it totally broke the middle classes. But for the wealthy, it meant they went and bought the assets of the middle classes. Cheap and other things, assets. The super wealthy of Argentina went and bought assets with their money that they had squirreled away, dollars in foreign financial bank accounts. And then you also had who I call the economic carpetbaggers. Civil War, American Civil War. They all came on the wagons with a bag of money. You know, them carpetbags. And they had money in them, and they came and bought farms and estates and businesses and lumber mills. They bought assets in the Confederacy because the Confederacy was broke. And they bought them at rock bottom prices. And they sold for rock bottom because they needed the money to buy food for the kids. Well, that's what happened in Argentina. Carpetbaggers came from all over the world with bags of money that was just moved electronically, and they bought up the assets of Argentina. Well, that's what's going to happen around the world. But you've got to own assets, because this one's going to be different. Too much money chasing too few assets, distorting the world of investment. And that's all he says. You know what I mean? But basically, he's not really telling you the story there, is he? He's not slagging off the Federal Reserve. He's not slagging off the Bank of England. He's not explaining to you that it happened to Argentina in 2000, and it's in my book. Alex hasn't told you that it's in my book. I wrote that in 2005. Alex isn't talking about so many things, is he? Because Alex is a paid up for reporter of the establishment. And he's also informing certain people. Joe Average won't read that, but I read it and I get it. So, as I say, Morrison's, it's going to be very interesting, but don't start falling for all that jingoistic shit. When they say, he's a traitor if he sells, you know, the CEO, he's a traitor. And the MPs, when you hear the MPs start saying, we're going to have a chat with him and tell him not to sell because it's not in the interest of this government. But none of them will mention that it's not that it's against the law for him to not sell, but if he does not sell, he can be sued personally, and he's personally liable. He can be sued by investors because they would have made money. So they will sue him for that money that they would have made personally, individually. And no other directors will join in and say, stick with him, because they get sued as well. The world changed. And I think it was either John Major or Tony Blair where that law was changed. But it'll have been Gordon Brown as well. But you see, so that's Morrison's, all that stuff. Alex Brummer, he's definitely been watching my videos. Now, here's another thing. Look, somebody else might have been watching my video. What's this reporter's name? Lucy White, city correspondent at the Mail. Remember when I told you BlackRock, there's something going on? They're buying up homes in America. They're going and buying up all the houses on an estate. Let's say a builder's building 20 houses, and he puts the drawings up, then he puts a big board up saying, you know, and then phone this number if you want to register an interest. Well, BlackRock are going and buying them all before they're even built. They're buying houses, they're paying 30, 40, 50% extra. A house is put up for $100,000. They're going and offering $140,000, $130,000, $150,000, so that it's sold immediately. They're paying over the odds so that people can't compete against BlackRock. And I said there's something going on in America. Well, Obama, and I also told you that Obama, in his last days in office, he signed a bill that saying that companies that invested in housing, if the housing value crashed, they'd get compensated. So all this extra money that BlackRock is paying for these houses if there's a financial crash and the value of the homes drop, fucking BlackRock will get compensated by the American government because it's in a bill that Obama signed. So BlackRock don't lose. They don't lose any money. So I've told you that little nugget of information. Well, newspaper yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yep. John Lewis turns landlord in plan to build 10,000 homes for rent. So John Lewis, who have the stores, the Lewis stores, they're going to build 10,000 apartments, homes. Now that's the company like Marks and Spencer's. You know, it's a company. It has a store. It also has an online presence where you can order stuff. It's got a very good reputation. It pays its workers a bonus based on sales. So a part of the profits is put aside and then shared amongst the workers. It's got a very good reputation. Well, now it's going into the building games, building up, because some bright spark on the board has decided they're going to borrow money. All this money that's in the Bank of City of London, it's the same as BlackRock. It's the same as the people who are going to buy Morrison's. Somebody at John Lewis has decided they're going to borrow money at low interest or no interest, and they're going into the housing market because, like BlackRock, like I said, there's something going on. They know that there's going to be homes needed in the next few years. Well, not just the next few years, next 20, 30 years. So listen to this. John Lewis is turning its hand to housing as it attempts to revive its fortunes by becoming a landlord, because it's not making much money in the stores because of Amazon and the way things are going. This pandemic has hit the profits of John Lewis and Amazon, who are paying fuck all tax in this country. They're crushing John Lewis. So John Lewis, they've got to instead of going to the MPs and saying make Amazon pay tax, no, somebody started this brilliant ways of building houses, borrowing money off the banks because the interest rates are fuck all. And there's so much money in there, they're going to throw it at you. The 157-year-old department store chain wants to build 10,000 homes over the next decade and has already earmarked sites for 7,000. They will be tucked away in car parks next to distribution centres. So you're going to have them on, what do you call it, industrial estates. Fucking John Lewis think they're going to build homes for rent. Well, they are going to do it. On industrial estates, where there's car parks, where there's bits of land. So they're going to throw up an apartment block on an industrial estate near their distribution centres or wherever. But they must have the land already for 7,000 of them. They must have been planning this for a while. This isn't. They haven't decided this in the last few weeks. They've been looking at this for a long time, just like BlackRock in America and others. All this long-term planning. They will be tucked away in car parks next to distribution centres and even above Waitrose supermarkets. So as they build a supermarket, they're going to put a couple of floors of apartments there, because you've got the same floor area on the ground. So you had the floor area on the ground in a field for a supermarket. They're just going to build an extra, put a bit more foundation in, and they're going to put an extra 5, 6, 7 floors on. Because your supermarkets are 2 floors. You know, you got your supermarket with your high roof, and then you have a bit of an office tucked in the corner. So basically, it's 2, 3 floors. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to reduce it all and then just throw floors of apartments on top. What a good idea. And you've still got the same floor area in the field. The initial developments are set to be located in the southeast, where the price of land is high, where you can get a good rent, near a railway station for your train into London, and residents will be able to rent the properties furnished with John Lewis products. So what they're going to build is, they're going to build rabbit hutches. You know, like Japan. I'd say that they're going to build rabbit hutches, small apartments for single people, because then you get a guaranteed rent. You don't want single mums. They don't want people on benefits. And they're going to furnish them. So basically, they're going to be furnished apartments that you can rent. And I bet you've got fuck all legality. It's not like when you rent a home from an housing association or a private landlord. I bet they make sure you've got less rights than all the other systems. But they're going to be furnished with John Lewis furnishings. So you're going to have to protect them. So if you're planning to live there for 5-10 years, as that stuff wears out, you know, you fucking can't ruin it. Or if you leave, you'll get a big bill for a new sofa, and the old sofa will be taken out, and a John Lewis sofa will be fucking brought in, and then you'll get a big bill. Sounds like a right racket. Sounds like a mafia racket. The chain's 80,000 staff could also be offered discounted rents. The move into property is an effort to kickstart profits amid increasing competition from online rivals. Amazon. Since Dame Sharon White took over as chairman in February last year, she has shut 16 of the 51 department stores. So you've got all that land. They own all that land, 16 stores. So you can fucking take down the stores, build smaller stores on that footprint, and build the apartment block upwards. The firm, which is owned by its staff, also scrapped its employees' bonus last year for the first time since 1953. Typically, a developer might try to maximise returns and then move on to the next one. Chris Harris, John Lewis's property director, told the Sunday Times, "We are not trying to do that. We are aiming to charge a fair rent and stay for the long haul." I bet. I won't be surprised if they made it a separate part of the company, so that all the people who work for John Lewis don't get a bonus based on the money that this is going to make. I bet the people who start running this carve it off, just like Kraft did with Mondale after they bought Cadbury's. And I bet none of the profit from this goes into the system of the people who work in the stores. So that's two things that I've talked about that are now slowly coming up. We've got the fact that the system is being flooded with money. And Alex Brummer, even though he's only wrote that much, he's only wrote 2 paragraphs. Doesn't matter. They're taking note, or they're starting to comment on it. And then we've got John Lewis, who are basically doing what BlackRock are doing, but in a slightly different way. But there are others doing this because all that money is out there through quantitative easing. City of London, Wall Street, Frankfurt, Berlin, they're all flooded with quantitative easing money looking for scams and schemes to make money and also to buy assets ready for when economies collapse. Because to own an asset is better than having money in the bank that's worthless that you then can't lend because everybody's fucked.